Not Too Shabby is having a video hop sharing their new masculine mini bundle. Hey everyone, it's Joy here and welcome to my channel. Let me share what this bundle is. This is the Grit and Grunge 6x6 patterned paper. There's 12 designs. It is double-sided. It's kind of glossy. I think these are really fun patterned papers. I love how they look, and I'm going to use a couple of these. Then there is the Rustic Outdoorsman Ephemera die cut pieces. I'm going to share here in just a second. And there is quite a few images in here. You've got a couple fishing images, you've got some camping images, hiking and kayaking. So I used everything. Well, I used camping and hiking. I didn't use everything. I used camping and hiking. Then we have the Grunge and Grit enamel dots, and then the Great Outdoors sentiments. So I'm starting with some Distress Oxide ink in Rusty Hinge, and then I'm also going to use that coordinating color in the Distress Spritz. For my background, I spritzed that with water, and I'm gonna run my cardstock through this. This is a thicker cardstock, and I just wanna create this really fun kind of watercolory background, definitely inspired by those ephemera pieces. I think they're so pretty. Even though they're outdoorsy, I think they're so pretty. Then I'm going to use peeled paint, and the same thing with the Distress Spritz, and I just used my heat tool to dry that a little bit in between the applications. I'm going to shake up that Distress Spritz. This is just going to give a little shimmer and shine without it being like in your face into the paper. So I'm going to slide this across with my paper. I realized I needed a little bit more water, so I spritzed my paper with my Distress sprayer. I'm going to dry that, and then I'm going to come back in and add a little bit more of that peeled paint. I also want to let you guys know that you can use the code RUGGED10 for 10% off of this release, and I have that down in the description below with a link and everything to these products. Now I'm going to splatter on the background with more of the Distress Spritz in Rusty Hinge and peeled paint. Now I'm going to do just some tearing. I want these edges pretty rough. And then I will use a Walnut Stain Distress Oxide ink just to get rid of that white edge. And then you can see there is some of that fun patterned paper from the Grit and Grunge patterned paper. And I did trim that down to an A2 size, which measures 4 1/4 by 5.5. I'm actually ink blending first with Vintage Photo. And then I will bring in that Walnut Stain, just to add a little bit of a darker edge. This is actually going to be the piece that holds our sentiment, and I am going to stamp that a little bit differently on here. I'm going to use 2 of those ephemera pieces. My original layout here was just 1, but once I had it all ready to go, I thought, no, I want to do another one. A little bit more of the Vintage Photo around the edges. I do want to distress these little images, and then I will also again use the Walnut Stain, and I will do that for both. And then I decided this needs to have a matte behind it, so I'm going to use some black cardstock, and the matte is going to be very small. I just want a hint of black around the edges. First, I'm going to stamp my sentiment, and I'm going to line up kind of how I want it to go. I didn't have to change my sentiment when I changed the design. Instead of using 1 of these little ephemera pieces, I'm going to use 2. I cannot remember what this stamp set is called. This is not part of the bundle, but I did use it. I will have that linked in the description for you below. I'm so sorry, I can't remember the name of it. It's the first sentiment says happy birthday, and then the other one says another trip around the sun. So I'm going to turn those sideways for my design on my card today. So I'm going to line those 2 up, close the lid to my MISTI, and then I'm going to ink those up with some black ink and stamp that. I'm going to do that a couple times so I can get a nice, good, crisp image. well, 3 times. And then here's where I'm going to adhere my little ephemera piece to a piece of black cardstock, and then I'm going to trim that down on the other 2 sides. But like I said, it's very little. The mat is very, very little. I just want a hint of that black cardstock around the edges. Let me adhere this piece down. I can trim the excess off. I do end up moving it up just a little bit so it's more centered, since I decided to do 2 of those little ephemera pieces. I'm using 1mm black foam adhesive behind my ephemera squares. I do want to have those popped up with a little bit of dimension. I think that's a lot of fun. And I'm going to line this up, one towards the top, one at the bottom, but I want to leave some space in between. And I do want to see that ink smushing we did on that background, kind of giving it that watercolor look. But let's take a look at this. Look at how fun that is. Those images are fabulous, and I love that pattern paper. Okay, for my next card, I'm going to make a mini slimline card. My original thought was to use 3 of these images, but I only end up using 2. But I'm going to cut 1/4 of an inch off on each side, not the top and bottom, just the sides, because I need this to fit on a 6x3 piece, because the pattern paper is a 6x6. So a mini slimline is 6.5 by 3.5. I'm going to use the sentiment from the Great Outdoors sentiments. This one says, "You are my greatest adventure," and I'm going to do that onto some, or ink that onto some white cardstock, and I'm going to trim that down really close to the sentiment on the sides. I'm going to ink blend all of this with a little bit of vintage photo. I want to get rid of that white. And also, my white cardstock is different than the white on these images, and now that they're all the same color, you can't notice a difference. I'm also going to add that 1mm foam adhesive behind these pieces. I have a black piece of cardstock that measures 6 inches by 3 inches, and I'm going to line up my images here. And then what we're going to do is bring in pieces of patterned paper. I trimmed down pieces bigger than I needed because I can just trim the excess off. I'm adding a piece of 2mm black foam adhesive strips to the top and bottom, and I'm going to tear these edges as well. What I want to do is add this at the top, add it at the bottom, and it's going to kind of sandwich those fun images and the sentiment in between it. So like you're peeking through to see this fun kind of scene going on in the background. I'm going to ink blend these edges with walnut stain. I don't want that white cardstock showing. But like I said, these pieces are way bigger than I need, which is exactly how I trimmed that down. I want to be able to line it up top and bottom, and then be able to trim the excess off the edges. So I'm just taking my ink pad directly to the paper, getting rid of that white. I'm going to remove the release paper on my strips here, my foam adhesive strips. And then I'm going to line this up, not to the top edge of my cardstock, but to the images. So let me do the same thing at the bottom, and then I can kind of see what is revealed and what isn't. Then you can see I'm going to trim the excess from the top and the bottom, and then we have this part of our mini slimline card. Now I thought I need to do some more of that ink smushing kind of watercolor look for the background. And after I put these enamel dots on here, I'm going to take a piece of cardstock that measures 6.5 by 3.5, which is the mini slimline dimensions. And I am going to use Uncharted Mariner and peeled paint, because there is a little bit of blue in here and there's definitely some green. So I kind of wanted to bring that out with my background. So I'm going to smush that onto my work surface, just spritz it with some water and just drag my paper through it, just doing that in a couple different spots. And then I can bring in that peeled paint. I'm going to dry with my heat tool in between the layers. And then this creates a really nice backdrop for our images that we just adhered together. I will adhere this to a white mini slimline card base. I'm going to do some tape runner and a little bit of liquid glue, because you know the paper is a little bit warped because we added water to it, and so I want to make sure that that will really hold nicely to the card panel. And then I can adhere this right in the center. I love this card. I think it's so fun. I love both of these. I love all of this whole collection. It is so perfect. Masculine cards, but even girls that love this kind of stuff, this is a perfect card for them as well. Let's take a look at this up close. Look at how fun that is. I love it. I want to thank you guys so very much for stopping by and watching. I hope that you enjoyed these projects. You definitely want to hop along, so check down in the description below, and I will see you guys soon with another video.